Thank you for joining us today. My name is Priscilla Von Sorella, the marketing manager at Mirriad, the leader of in-content advertising and virtual product placement. I'm joined today by Sparsh Pandya, client director of Kantar and CEO of Mirriad, Stephan Beringer. In today's discussion, we're unveiling all of the data uncovered in our new jointly authored white paper entitled Hack to the Future, Understanding Viewer Attitudes and Preferences to Overcome Ad Avoidance. Let's begin. Sparsh, can you start by telling us a little bit about this white paper?
We at Kantar have a framework of research called Media Reactions, and this is primarily geared at understanding consumer perceptions towards advertising, media trends, where the industry is going, this kind of thing. So we've got kind of two strands of research, right? We've got a brand equity focus where we really look to understand how brands are performing in market and whether their activations and campaigns have the potential to increase their sort of brand health position. But then we also have consumer perceptions in mind, and to understand, is there an appetite out there for any of these kind of brand comms, any new innovations within the industry, technology, that kind of thing. So that's really what this paper is centered around. This research is geared around understanding consumer perceptions within the US. We've surveyed 1,000 people. The actual Media Reactions survey is a global survey. It surveys 18,000 respondents across multiple markets and regions. So we've sort of invoked that model and applied it to the theme of product placement and sort of video branded integrations as a format, with a view to understand, is there an appetite out there in the market? Do consumers feel positively or negatively about it? And most importantly, how does it compete, or where does it sit in the landscape along with established formats like TV advertising, video advertising, that kind of thing?
Thank you so much. And Stephan, can you tell me, what does it mean for Mirriad to be a part of this kind of study?
For us, it was just kind of fundamentally important to really understand, also in comparison to traditional formats, in terms of what are the root causes and the main effects of, let's just say, advertising fatigue. How does that actually manifest itself in terms of viewer attention? And then furthermore, literally manifest itself in terms of brand preference, affinity, awareness, all business KPIs and brand KPIs. And so for us, having this research now bringing to the surface sort of these fundamental insights or truths, you should say, in terms of what has been going on for all these years, right? And just historically speaking, we're coming from an era, and we've spoken about that a couple of times, where advertising was a cultural phenomenon, right? And people actually wanted to see ads, and that's, I don't want to call them the golden days, but that was just, again, advertising was a cultural phenomenon. And it has basically eroded, right? And due to, oversaturation, formats that are really not able to convey any kind of emotional anything, honestly, because if you see sort of a small piece of video ad and a skip button, that's not really sort of enticing any kind of emotion. And understanding really now on a sort of quantitative basis what is really happening as a proof to what everybody knows, to be honest, and we know this and we all feel it. And then to put that into the context of what actually new formats that come from a different angle, that actually really take the position of the viewer, of the consumer, of the audience, etc., put the experience at the center to convey, the values and the power, the excitement of a brand and product, and to understand really sort of these correlations. That's the fundamental piece that we were really interested in understanding.
Sparsh, can you tell us, how has this study changed over the years, and how does this differ from previous media reaction studies?
Yeah, so Media Reactions is one of our sort of in-house studies that's run every year. It's aimed at the industry. It not only surveys consumers, but it also surveys marketers and business leaders to understand, trends and how they impact the industry on a holistic level. Over the years, it's evolved. New channels have been added in, new parts of the industry have been sort of shed light upon. And really where we differ here with this study is we've sort of taken the structure of Media Reactions and then we've really focused it in on video product placement and video formats in particular. So we've got traditional video with TV, online video, those kind of formats, but then we've got a variety of branded integration touch points that we've focused in on. So that would be products that have been integrated into TV shows, products that have been integrated into streaming, and branded integrations into all types of video, other types of video content as well online.
Thank you. And what would you say are the most compelling pieces of data that we're uncovering in this study?
We found some, I think what Stephan alluded to with things that we already knew. I think this has been a really good validation study of a lot of trends that we've been picking up. So the fact that there's certainly an avoidance and an apathy towards the traditional, particularly highly repetitive, high-frequency advertising found on formats like TV. We found that sentiment has been even stronger expressed than it has in past. And we've also, on the sort of converse side, we found that there's a great receptivity towards these product placements and integrative efforts, namely because we feel that, content doesn't get broken up.
And Stephan, from your perspective, what do you find to be the most compelling elements of this study?
Well, it's the singular pieces and the chain. And so to talk about the singular pieces, it's like if we just think about 85% of viewers are trying to, well, actually not trying, they are avoiding being exposed to advertising. That's just, let's just take a step back. It's 85% people not seeing the ads that an advertiser is investing in. Okay, right? So that's quite, a scary number. Hence, the whole attention economy concept, and basically the big discussion in the industry is literally just, we have the proof here, and basically it's just horrendous when you think about it. And people, what do? They leave the room, they look at their phones, they have just all sorts of activities in terms of just trying to avoid the ad exposure. So that's the one thing. And now you compare that to in content as ultimately a format, one of the formats that really sort of takes a different angle. It's maybe the opposite angle. I'm not interrupting anybody. I'm not pushing an advertisement into your face and basically saying, whoa, stop enjoying what you're doing because now you need to see my ad. But basically going into the content itself. And here comes now the astonishing result. And we've seen that in the past, that there's a 7x preference of towards that format as opposed to the interruptive format. And that leads then to 75%, and that's sort of the second big number to remember. Again, over 85% avoid traditional ads. 75% actually enjoy and say this is a good thing, the in-content exposure. So that's a tremendous revelation. And following that, and here comes now the sort of the mind-boggling number that we really extracted out of the study, is that above 20 percentage points, is the uplift in sales, right, after exposure to in-content.
And perhaps just to add a bit of flavor to some of those themes that Stephan talked about. So if I've just got some of the numbers here from our study. 89% of our 1,000 respondents leave the room to do another activity when an ad break comes on. 88% have their finger above the skipping button. 81% switch channels, and upwards of 40% just turn off their device entirely. So that avoidance, or that active avoidance, is certainly out there, and it's being displayed. And that's why this is really exciting to see the flip side of the results in the positive direction for the integrated content, because people don't have to do any of those behaviors, right? They don't have to bother about getting to leave the room or to change channel, or even invest the mental capacity to get annoyed, right? People just carry on watching the show that they enjoy. And hopefully, if an integration is done right and it's done contextually appropriately, then you get a really valuable and quality brand experience out of it.
I think contextual is really important to touch on here. Stephan, can you share some examples of brands that have utilized in content advertising?
One good example is really, taking Lexus as a very formidable brand and business and partner of ours, who are really investing very strongly in multicultural content. So we tend to go into music videos and other forms, and where we can see that ultimately the lift in brand awareness. And again, these are Hispanic and other sort of multicultural music videos, where you can see the brand lift preference, etc., going through the roof. It's just spectacular to see it. And why is it? Because ultimately the brand is being associated with the content, with the if you will, the content creator, okay, which in this case can be the artist or whoever. And by doing so and being very, very sort of intimately connected with that context and the origin of the content, just, I guess, it drives, much, much more credibility. It, recall, everything, all the measures you can think of, right, list them out, will just go automatically up.
Sparsh, let's go deeper into those viewer attitudes and perceptions to in-content advertising. What exactly are viewers feeling about in-content advertising?
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, to be honest, because we run this survey every year, as I said, and we test the same metrics. So we're always testing positive perceptions, negative perceptions, not only whether people like types of advertising or not, but what sort of emotional responses do they invoke as well. And what's remarkable is traditional established formats like TV, online video, they are over-indexing on the negatives. So the negative things you really don't want from your content is being too repetitive, really tiring out the consumers, being dull or boring, and appearing sort of in places which might not be appropriate for you to appear, or appearing when you're not wanted. So all of those metrics are over-indexing for traditional channels like TV and online video. And then when we get to positive perceptions, things like trust, quality, innovation, what people perceive as a really special kind of experience, those are all where your branded integrations are really pulling through and indexing higher than the established format. So I think we've got a really good progression point there from what we talked about at the start with the growing apathy on one side, and that line is positive incline. But I wonder, Stephan, if you have anything to say about kind of making those placements really contextually relevant, making them fit for what the consumer wants and the appetites out there, because you guys activate these.
How to do the contextual, and we look at ourselves as sort of being the pinnacle of contextual advertising, because in a way, what we really do is to create a fusion between the context of the content and ultimately how contextually a brand might fit in. So a very banal example is like a shaving brand, right, being positioned, of course, or placed in a bathroom, right? That's what you would expect. Or a coffee brand eventually being positioned in, an office coffee, in an office kitchen. And our view is that, if you do this intelligently and in the right way, with the right frequency, you will definitely you will be creating almost a superpower, a contextual superpower, because what happens effectively, just think about it, if you start penetrating, the audiences with placement and integrations in bathrooms, over time you will become, the shaving brand for people. That's as simple as that, and the same is true for the coffee in the office. So it's kind of very, very simple examples, but I think it's very clear that, on the baseline, you establish a brand as being the product or brand, right, in a certain context, and that will ultimately then lead to recall levels and affinity and preference levels that are way above whatever you can achieve with the traditional model.
Every single piece of research we've done, and we're sitting on 30 studies at this point, we published a paper last year kind of talking about exactly how to make these placements work best, and every single piece of research is showing that it needs to be extremely realistic. Natural fit is really important.
No, it's a good point. And we're able to achieve, around 85, 83% in terms of the feedback and the response we're getting from audiences saying, this is a natural fit.
I was keen to understand what sort of reaction do you get out there when you take these campaigns that you can plan to advertisers, to the industry?
There is an urgency now to really explore very, very quickly. And the path out of this is clearly for all brands, and that's what we're hearing from all sides, is we have to become part of people's experiences. Some advertisers say, well, this is fantastic because I'm still running my traditional campaigns, for lack of a better word, but I will be adding in-content advertising as a way to ultimately, drive recall because, and ultimately, elevate the brand equity by running in-content campaigns. And others just say, no, or not no, Our view is a different one, right? We want to penetrate audiences that otherwise we could not penetrate. There's no way to reach certain audiences because they're just switched off.
So what we see confirms what you've been mentioning, Stephan. So, in the first paper we published, we saw that these insertions into content have the power to amplify the performance of TV. Certainly those foundations of reach that are laid down by traditional media will very much remain important for advertisers in getting their name out there, building brand awareness, share of voice, these kind of things. But what we see increasingly at Kantar is there are other components of brand health and brand power that are equally, if not more important, and that's primarily being a meaningfully different brand. And meaningful difference is our sort of conception of understanding brand power in the world today. And it sort of diverges away from traditionally held views of, reach is it and reach is everything that an advertiser needs to focus on. And really it builds layers onto that, saying that reach is important, but so is quality. And what is quality? We've validated that through metrics. And those are being meaningful as a brand, driving value perceptions that are positive, driving sort of recognition of the fact that you're doing something different in the marketplace from the consumers. And then difference is really not just distinction, but it's kind of setting trends in your category and being a leader among the pack within your category space as well. And so if we apply that thinking to this format, what we really see is that this format is intrinsically meaningfully different because it can insert into content pieces which have meaning to audiences, which audiences have affinity towards, characters, this kind of thing. And then also, naturally, as you said, you're not interrupting content, you're not competing with 7 other advertisers in a break, you're not, dealing with 2-second attention spans or something like that on a social platform. You've got people who are tuned in, engaged, and have an affinity with their favorite show. So if done right, you're really building a quality experience out of it. And that's what we've observed. When we apply that sort of framework of thinking more and more to these campaigns, we're seeing a successful return on those metrics.
There's many aspects to it that just lead to this overall fatigue. And again, this is not about being good or bad, but ultimately jointly finding a solution. This is where in-content advertising is literally the bridge back, if you will, to relevance, to doing something meaningful, to doing something enjoyable if it's done well.
And maybe to build one last thought on top of that, what we know is that a tested solution is the one that's going to work best. And like we've shown with our second paper now, the empirical base for making these media decisions is really, really important for advertisers.
And to build on that, and maybe the grand finale, is, as we enter sort of the arena of addressable and programmatic, we're taking this whole concept obviously on steroids. Contextual relevance can now, you can think about it as creating it, with the brand and product and the content itself, but now you can refine it, from an audience perspective, from a geo standpoint, from a device standpoint, from an audience profile standpoint. And so now you're taking this to a completely new level. That is definitely the breakthrough where, to your point, literally this now inserts itself into the overall scheme. And, in content advertisement just becomes a line item. Sounds a bit dull, but actually a very exciting one, because we're trying to, actually really turn things around and bring back attention to the market, bring back excitement in the audiences, and that's going to help everybody.
Thank you, Stephan, for joining us in today's discussion. And Sparsh, thank you so much for the insightful data and just conversation today. If you're interested in downloading the white paper entitled Hack to the Future, Understanding Viewers' Attitudes and Preferences to Overcome Ad Avoidance, please get your copy at the link provided. Thank you for joining.